You can be seated. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good morning. How are you today? Okay. I made a decision yesterday afternoon. I'm going to bring back Dr. Eli live. Okay? It won't be today. So we're not going to continue on with his testimony. We're going to call a new witness. We have to adjust to his schedule to bring him back live. That way it's just consistent. You get to see him live the whole time. Okay? So you're not taking any inference from that. It's just, that was my decision. Okay? You ready to call our first witness, Ms. Grubb?
We are, Your Honor. We call John O'Connell.
Okay. Come down and make the path. Okay, I need you to raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Go ahead and make yourself comfortable in the chair there. You've got an aerial mic there in front of you, so you have to enunciate. You're in an area we was sanitized last night. You can take off your mask if you wish, but that's strictly up to you. Okay? I need you to state your name for the record and spell it so that my court reporter can get used to your diction.
John O'Connell, John-O-C-O-N-N-E-L-L.
Okay, just relax for a second, okay? Just enunciate out. It'll pick you up as long as you talk up, okay? You're in kind of a fishbowl too, so that's why I'm having you do this, okay? With that, Ms. Grubb.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Morning.
And good morning to the jury. John, I believe that your preferred form of address is the name Sean. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And why Sean?
My father used to call me Sean. He was the Irishman, and Sean is John in Gaelic. So my dad always called me Sean, and my mom always called me John. So
You weren't confused, were you? Okay. So, Sean, talk to me a little bit about about your education and how long you've been in Central Ohio, et cetera.
I graduated, I got a Bachelor of Science degree at Ohio State University in 1977. Then I got a master's degree in pharmacy administration in 1991. I started at Mount Carmel Hospital in 1975 as a pharmacy intern and worked there for 2 years until I graduated, and then I got hired as a staff pharmacist at Mount Carmel Hospital West. I stayed there at Mount Carmel West until 2019, and so I was there for approximately 43 years. I was a staff pharmacist for probably about 15 years, and then I got promoted to a operations manager at Mount Carmel West, and then I continued as an operations manager, and eventually in approximately 2012, I took on the job. I first was interim director of pharmacy, and then I was promoted to director of pharmacy. So I was director of pharmacy into 2019.
Okay, let's back up a little bit. Did you grow up here?
Pardon? Yes. Well, no, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and then I came down here to go to Ohio State University and met my wife, and we never left.
Okay. Let's draw your attention to the time frame that this case is about, which is approximately 2014 to 2018. Who was in your chain of command at the hospital at that time?
In 2014, I reported my chain of command below me was I had an operations manager, Randy Miles, and I had a clinical coordinator, Sarah Hemker, and reporting upward, I had a chief pharmacy officer, Janet Whitty, who was the system pharmacy officer for all of Mount Carmel Health hospitals. And I also had kind of a dotted line to Dina Bush, who was the vice president of nursing. And so those are my two that I reported to.
Okay. Why did you stay at Mount Carmel for 43 years?
Well, I started, as I said, I started in 1975 as a pharmacy intern, and I worked there for a couple of years and as an intern, but then I became a pharmacist in 77. And as I continued to work at Mount Carmel, I began to understand that they had a wonderful culture. Mount Carmel West was founded by the Sisters of the Holy Cross, and they had a mission to take care of the indigent. And so Mount Carmel West was actually built in that area where there were a lot of indigent, poor people. So I began to realize that culture really began to attract me as more than just practicing as a pharmacist, but that fulfilling a mission to do charity work and try to provide health care to those patients in the inner city. I also began to talk with a lot of colleagues, nurses, doctors, as I continued to stay on, and they all seemed to, or a great number of them, shared the same philosophy of taking care of patients in that area. And that's a lot the reason why many of them came there and why many of them stayed there. So I really felt drawn to the mission. And so despite the fact that I might have other opportunities to move on, I continue to stay on. So
Thank you. And does Mount Carmel Hospital express any religious identity?
well, it's a Catholic institution, so it does have a lot of foundation in that. Like I said, it was founded by the Sisters of the Holy Cross. So there were a number of individuals that I knew at Mount Carmel who were Catholic, but a lot of them were Christian. But we had some non-Christian individuals there too. But we would go to church together sometimes. There was a chapel, and a lot of our colleagues, doctors, nurses, myself, when we were working on days where
Your Honor, I'm sorry.
Mass or whatever.
At some point, it's not responsive at this point.
It's perfectly responsive to the question.
The question was, is it a
Okay.
Catholic hospital?
We're not doing overruled. Dr. Finch, what you got?
I think he's expressed
I think so,
enough.
yeah.
Was and is Mount Carmel a teaching hospital?
Yes, Mount Carmel's has medical residents, surgical residents. They also, we take pharmacy residents, and it also has a college of nursing. So it's very committed to teaching, yeah.
Okay. And what does that mean for the layperson? How would you explain what complications or other factors are at play at the hospital if it is a teaching hospital?
I'd say the advantage of the teaching hospital is that you have students constantly coming in, and you have preceptors who work with those students. So you would, as a preceptor, you would get a lot of knowledge from the students while they were still in school to update you. But also you developed a really good rapport with the students, say the medical and surgical residents, for example. Our pharmacists would be involved with helping to teach some of those medical and surgical residents and developed a good collegial relationship such that when the residents graduated with their medical degrees or their surgical degrees, a lot of them would stay, and so our pharmacists were able to interact with them very well because they knew each other. So we had a very good relationship. So that teaching really brings a lot of current knowledge, and it also develops a very good relationship with the students, and then after they graduate, when they practice.
Thank you. Do you believe that the staff at Mount Carmel had assumptions about each other?
Objection, Your Honor, as to what others assumed.
Okay, I'll withdraw the question.
Yeah.
What are your assumptions? What were your assumptions about your coworkers, if you had any?
Well, my coworkers, because I was involved with a lot of hiring them, I knew them very well, and my assumption was that they would practice with integrity, that they were very honest, and honesty was a really important part of trust and honesty, so we could talk to each other openly and could trust what we would, information we would exchange in our daily practice. So integrity, honesty, a commitment to keeping up with their practice was what I would say was.
Okay. Was there a time when the hospital was planning to move?
Yes.
And what did that involve?
Wow, that was, it took a tremendous amount of planning by everybody, especially the department heads at Mount Carmel West, to meet with architects, to talk about processes, to figure out what type of I guess, healthcare delivery system we wanted to have in Grove City. So we spent many, many hours with that. So I would individually met with architects, worked on the design of the new pharmacy. I also was involved with the State Board of Pharmacy to determine how we could transport narcotics when we did move. We talked about the services of pharmacy so that they were ideally set so that our pharmacists could work on the floors with the patients and deliver the best pharmacy care. So it was a lot of time spent on that.
Thank you. When did this planning begin?
I would have to say I started getting involved with it probably in about maybe 2016, 2015 was when they began. There had been plans in the works probably before that, but then when it really began to roll out, I got more involved.
Were there other pharmacy leaders involved in this planning process?
Yes, I mean the chief pharmacy officer, Janet Woody, was involved. My operations manager, Randy Miles, was involved in helping with the design. Even my clinical coordinator was involved. So, yeah, we had pretty good representation.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a very personal question. When did you turn 65?
Let's see, that would be 7, 8. Be 2000, 2014. 2014, I think.
Okay. And the natural conversation that people have at 65 is, do I stay, do I go, do I retire? What paradigm was in your mind at that time?
Well, when I was 65, I really continued to be both challenged and enjoying what I was doing. And I was healthy, and I didn't feel any need to leave or retire at that time. And also, as I began to see when they decided to move the hospital, I really felt, because I had been there for so long, I really wanted to see that occur correctly so that, at least from the pharmacy's viewpoint, we would have really good services. And so I knew from all my experience previously that I could contribute to making a good transition to the new hospital. So I decided I'd stay on for a few years just to try to see that through.
Okay, thank you. So let's turn our attention briefly to your duties as director of pharmacy. What were your primary concerns as pharmacy director?
Well, there were multiple areas. I was the responsible pharmacist registered with the Ohio Board of Pharmacy, so I had overall responsibility for the management and safe supply of drugs throughout the hospital. I also was in charge of the finances of the Department of Pharmacy, so I had to oversee that we stayed within a budget, and I met with the finance people pretty frequently about that. I oversaw the purchasing of our pharmaceuticals. I also oversaw the actual personnel. I had about 80 some people that reported to me. We split those individuals up amongst my operations manager, but still overall I was still responsible for all those individuals in terms of their performance, and I did performance evaluations and made sure that they were performing adequately. If there were issues, we had to address them. I worked with human resources quite a bit on the development of these individuals. I also had to help prepare for the Joint Commission, which is a surveying body that comes to the hospital about every 3 years.
Can I stop you right there? People talk about the Joint Commission, but I think there might be a longer title for what that is. Could you supply us with the longer title?
The Joint Commission of the Accreditation of Hospitals.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so they would come by about every 3 years, and they had different standards, and they would do a thorough survey of the hospital. I was more focused on the area of the Department of Pharmacy. So that area was called medication management, and there were lots and lots of rules and regulations, and they would survey that to see if we were compliant with that. So I was really pretty much in charge of making sure that happened too.
Thank you. As director of pharmacy, was drug diversion an issue for you?
Yes, that was the beginning. What I was saying was the safety of the drugs, both the purchasing and the distribution of drugs. And diversion was a very big part of my job, to stay tuned to any issues that we would suspect any kind of drug diversion, and especially as the narcotic issues, opiate issues began to crop up in the past decade. We really had to pay attention to our supply of drugs, especially narcotics. to try to prevent that from getting out into not only to get it out into the public from theft, but also from individuals that might be working at the hospital that may have an issue with addiction and are diverting to drugs.
Thank you. Were there personnel involved with the pharmacy program at Mount Carmel that targeted drug diversion?
Yes, we had we call him a system analyst. He was a pharmacist, and there were computer programs that at first one was called Pandora, and another one then later was RX Auditor, and these computer programs interfaced with Pyxis machines and would tell us if it would record when a narcotic was being taken out of the Pyxis machines and who took the drug out, and then reports would then be generated, and we would know how much Nurse X took out of a particular drug. Say it was fentanyl. We would know how many vials of fentanyl were taken out over a particular shift for that particular nurse. And then we would run reports and analysis for all the nurses in that particular unit, so we could see if anybody was taking more medication out than was the average. So if there were 10 nurses working on the floor on a particular shift, what was the average amount of narcotic they would take out in that shift? And then we would see, well, wait a minute, Nurse X is taking out 4 times as much. And that would alert us. So myself and my systems analyst would sit down every month with these reports and look at them, and that would be red flags. So once we saw that, we began to talk to our nursing directors over those particular nursing units and begin to ask them questions about, have you noticed anything going on with this particular nurse? Was she acting impaired? Calls in sick a lot? Her colleagues say anything that might make you think that something else is going on? And we would continue to pursue that. If we saw that we thought there really was a problem, we would notify the State Board of Pharmacy, and then they would get involved in the investigation to see if there was really diversion. Did I cover that enough? It's kind of...
Thank you. Calling your attention to the period leading up to October of 2018, did you have serious concerns about drug diversion in the nighttime ICU at Mount Carmel West?
No. And that we never saw any blip in our tool that we used, the computer system, to see that one particular nurse, another particular nurse was taking out more than what would be the average. And the thing we have to understand is in the intensive care unit, opiates are used a lot, fentanyl and morphine, Dilaudid, and so the average was always pretty high. So we really couldn't notice any difference. So nothing alerted us to let us know that somebody was taking out an abnormal amount from the Pyxis machine on the average when we looked at a monthly reading.
Thank you. Previously in your testimony, you talked about your role as a procurer of pharmaceutical products for the hospital. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your role involved in obtaining the drugs or other pharmaceuticals?
Well, I had a pharmacy purchaser who reported me in the department, and his job was to order the drugs, keep the inventory up of all our medications. And I would meet with him frequently. We would talk about what we call velocity, or how much were we going through with particular drugs. We'd be concerned about if we were going to run short on certain medications, especially critical ones. So we would talk about that. If there were changes in medical practice where new drugs were coming in, I would talk to him about we would have to order those. And then we would also interface with our corporate owner, which was Trinity Health. And Trinity would work with buyers, large manufacturing companies, pharmaceutical companies, and they would use those buyers to purchase the drugs, and then we would then order what they told us that we needed, what company we needed to use. So Trinity would every year would look at the different drug manufacturers. They look at both their costs and their quality. So they would sometimes they would go to the factories and inspect them. They made sure that the quality was a high quality, so that the Mount Carmel Health System, we would be guaranteed that we would get a good manufactured product, and it wouldn't be some generic, for lack of a term, slop house that was so that we actually used good manufacturers to supply our products.
Let's turn our attention to the general appearance of, say, for example, a vial of narcotics. Would that vial from a manufacturer have information on the vial?
Yes, absolutely. It would have the lot number of where what lot the drug was made from the manufacturer. Of course, the name of the manufacturer, the expiration date of the drug, of course, the strength and volume of the drug, or we would call it concentration. That was pretty much the information on that. And it would also have a barcode. So when it was being used, that particular individual vial, it could be scanned, and then that scanning would also tell us it's the correct drug.
So even down to a little tiny 2 milliliter vial, you could keep track of that?
Yes, absolutely. You could track it.
And did you?
Yes. We had reports, and if we ever, for example, periodically there'd be a notice that there might be a tainted batch from a manufacturer such that the drug wasn't as potent as it was supposed to be. And so they would alert us, and then we would know, they would give us the batch, and then we were able to go actually into our inventory, not only in our storage area, but also in our Pyxis cabinets, and actually pull those drugs out and replace it with another product that was meeting the standards. And then we would get that drug back to them.
Okay, thank you. Did this procedure involve staying on top of drugs for freshness and rotating stock if needed?
Yeah, our computer system, our Pyxis system, would alert us on any drugs that were approaching expiration. So it would give us a lead time of a few days. It would say X drug is going to expire. So our pharmacy technicians would get reports of that, and they would actually daily go through the inventory, and they would pull the expired or almost expired drugs.
Thank you. Let's turn our attention now to the fall of 2018. Was there a major event in your life in the fall of 2018?
Yes, I had physically I had my hip replaced the entire month. I was gone the entire month of November on medical leave. I had my hip replaced October 29th. And so I was gone through the month of November and returned December 3rd. And so I was in a medical leave of absence.
What was your last day of work at Mount Carmel West?
Friday, October 26th.
Did anything happen on that day with respect to dosage issues and a physician?
Actually, on October 25th, which I believe was a Thursday, was when my operations manager, Randy Miles, approached me in the morning and told me that one of our night pharmacists had a concern about a dosage of medication, and I can't remember if he told me it was midazolam or fentanyl, or maybe both. And Randy said he was concerned about that, and so he was.
Stop. Got it. Sustain. Let's rephrase.
Thank you. You can't say what Randy told you, but
Oh, okay, sorry.
you did have a conversation with him.
Yes, I had
Correct.
a conversation.
Okay. And did you direct him or any other person that reported to you to engage in any activities as a result of that conversation?
Yes, I directed him to contact our quality and risk management individual, Katie Barga, and alert her that we had a concern and that we needed to look further into it to find out the circumstances of it so that we would know if it was a serious problem or just a general report, because in my capacity, I often heard people would come and tell me they have a concern about a particular drug or whatever, or the use of the drug. And so normally the first thing we have to do is get more information on it and understand why the doctor prescribed it and what was the patient's circumstances before we move into a larger investigation. So I went up to Katie, who was then going to talk to the nurses and look into it further.
Thank you. What day did you come back again?
December 3rd.
Okay. And upon your return, were there any developments with respect to this dosing question?
No, they talked to me first.
Well, when I came back December 3rd, I was bombarded by a lot of information related to the usage of fentanyl. At that time, individuals in Mount Carmel and risk management, quality assurance, were involved with running reports to find out more about high doses of fentanyl that were being used. They did some they ran extensive reports and determined that there were high usage of fentanyl, especially in one particular physician, which was Dr. Husel.
Objection, Your Honor.
Just asking him what he learned.
Okay, overruled.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So I was just learning that and found out the potential number of individuals and patients that were involved.
Okay, let's hold on for a second. Next question.
Okay, thank you. What was your reaction upon gaining knowledge about the dosing?
Well, my reaction was surprise that there were so many patients that were involved, and also surprised it was one individual physician. So, you know, my reaction was really very concerned about what happened. And
Next question.
Thank you. Okay. So did you take steps to address some of the interactions that you learned about with your staff? In other words, did you learn that a certain email had been sent by Josh Mush in June of 2018?
Yes, what happened with that was when I'd gotten back that first week of December, I addressed my pharmacy staff in a meeting and, asked them, I told them that I was surprised that no one
Your Honor,
had.
I think the question is not being responded to. The question was about the email from Josh.
Okay. I'll leave the answer as it stands. Let's ask a new question.
Okay, thank you. Did Josh Mush have any elevated role or assignments in the hospital that may have caused him to elevate a concern?
Josh was, at that time, we had formed an internal quality and safety committee in our Department of Pharmacy. And Josh, who was a staff pharmacist, had volunteered to be on this committee, along with a few other pharmacists and pharmacy technicians. Josh had volunteered and also volunteered to be the chair of that committee. So that was his role, and so the email that Josh had put out that I became aware of, that email was brought to my attention by another pharmacist who said you should see
Objection,
this.
Your Honor, as to
You
what
can't
the
talk about-
pharmacist said.
Gotcha.
Okay.
You can't talk about what someone has told you, okay?
Okay.
Did you confront Josh about what he did or didn't do after he expressed his concerns?
Yes. That first week I called, asked Josh to come to my office after I had read that email, and I asked him, this email was sent out in June, and I never heard anything else about it. Did anybody address you or talk to you? Because the email was asking the staff for information about high doses of fentanyl and ketamine.
Okay,
And-
stop.
Thank you. Okay.
You can finish it up, just that he was giving you more of a narrative than he was responsive. So,
Yeah, I'm done with the line anyway.
okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so did you also come to find out that there had been a discussion in a huddle in 2017 about some dosing practices of a physician?
I myself was not a participant in that huddle. I don't recall that.
Okay, what is a huddle?
A huddle is an informal meeting prior to shift change of our staff. So when people came in at 7 o'clock in the morning, pharmacists and pharmacy technicians, and the previous shift was still there, say the night shift, we would get together and they would discuss any kind of issues, just short-term issues in transition from one shift to the other. So they would bring up a point like, oh, by the way, we think we're running short on this particular drug, or there's been a computer that's down and something else. They brought up just sort of immediate concerns, so that would help transition to the next shift. So we would do that at 7 o'clock in the morning. And then we also did a huddle again at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when the day to evening shift occurred.
Would there be a scribe or somebody taking notes at a huddle?
The huddle was led typically by my operations manager or clinical coordinator. I occasionally was there, but not too frequently. And any notes that were taken were just strictly notes that were brought up on the particular concern. Nothing was formal. We weren't writing down like a meeting of everything that was going on in that huddle. Whoever was running the meeting might take a note that we need to follow up on this.
Okay. So let's talk for a minute about the training of pharmacists. How long again were you a pharmacist?
45 years.
Okay. And do pharmacists diagnose disease?
Could you repeat that?
Do pharmacists diagnose disease?
No, they don't diagnose.
In a hospital setting, do pharmacists order drugs?
No.
Okay. During your course of employment at Mount Carmel, did you mentor young pharmacists?
Yes, we had a pharmacy residency program. So we had pharmacists who had just graduated with their degree in pharmacy, and then they spent another year of training, more like on-the-job training. And they would rotate in multiple areas with multiple pharmacists on our staff, and they would actually spend a month with me going over finances and what a director does and a lot of other things like that. So I interacted with them. I was also a preceptor for Ohio Northern University and Ohio State University. So we took students in their last year of pharmacy school, and I would spend time talking to them and mentoring them and teaching them about pharmacy.
Thank you. What to your knowledge was taught in pharmacy school about end-of-life care?
That to me was an area that was, I would say I did not recall in my training anything on end-of-life care. Of course, that was a long time ago, but as the years went on, and I would interact with the pharmacy residents, students, there was never really a discussion of end-of-life care. There was no, to my knowledge, training on end-of-life care. There did begin to evolve knowledge on palliative care that became a specialty, and that kind of fell into somewhat oncology. So we did have a couple of pharmacists who spent some time on their own learning about that. So they increased their knowledge base in areas of palliative care. But end-of-life formalized training, it didn't, as far as I know, up until when I left, there wasn't any that I knew about locally or nationally.
Thank you. Did Mount, just to address Mount Carmel, did Mount Carmel have a training module on palliative care or end-of-life care for pharmacists?
Not at the time up through December of 2018.
Thank you. Who would the pharmacist rely upon to lead them as far as proper medication?
Any type of medication or just
In palliative care.
Oh, in palliative care. The pharmacist leaned heavily on the physician. The physician was especially the palliative care physicians who were trained in that area. Because the pharmacists didn't have the formalized training, they had to rely a great deal on the physician that they work with directly.
Okay. And in the palliative care arena, would the pharmacist always know what a medication order was going to be used for?
If there was a palliative care set of orders that was ordered by the physician, standard set of orders, then the pharmacist would know that set of orders were put into the computer system, and so therefore they would know what those drugs are being used for, which would be palliative care.
Thank you. I'm going to place on the projector an order set. It's labeled States Exhibit 17B.
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, it's my fault.
Sean, what is the topic or title of this?
Terminal ventilator withdrawal.
Okay. That's the rest of the first page. I'm going to show you the second page. Top and bottom. And the third page. Okay. Does this look familiar?
Yes.
And what's the effective date of this one?
Be 8/17/2016.
Okay. I'm going to also place States Exhibit 17A on the projector. Does that appear to be the same type of document?
Yes, terminal ventilator withdrawal.
And what's the effective and end date of that?
Effective date was 12/7/2010, and then end date was 8/17/2016.
Thank you. Let's talk about the drugs on here. This first page discusses morphine, correct?
Correct.
And it discusses the IV push protocols. Second page, Dilaudid, morphine, Versed, which is midazolam, correct?
Correct.
Last page, atropine, Ativan, Versed, oxygen.
Correct.
If a physician was going to employ this order set in a palliative extubation, would that physician place an order that would appear in pharmacy?
Your Honor, objection as to what a physician would do or wouldn't do. He's not a physician.
Well, I'm going to get there.
Okay.
We all know that the orders start and go.
I'll permit the question.
Thank you. If a physician was going to use this order set, would the employment of that order set arrive somewhere in pharmacy?
Yes.
How would that arrive?
It would be in the electronic, probably it would show up in PharmNet, which is the area where the pharmacists see their orders electronically. So
Okay.
they would see that in the multiple drugs that were selected.
All right. And when this request would come across FarmNet, would there be any notes on it as far as what it was for?
Other than the fact that it was for palliative extubation, or I should say terminal extubation, I don't think there'd be any other notes.
So if you're employing the order set, the use would appear in the queue?
These appear in the queue. To tell you the truth, I'm not sure.
Okay, all right, thank you. I note that morphine is prominently displayed on this order set, correct?
Correct.
Fentanyl is not, correct?
Correct.
Why would morphine, if you know as a pharmacist, why would morphine be included on this order set and fentanyl would not?
Your Honor, objection.
Sustained.
Does your training and experience as a pharmacist tell you what the various properties of morphine are?
Yes.
What are they?
Well, it's obviously an opiate analgesic, so it's used for pain. It also has a property to help with, in lower doses, to help with oxygenation. So it's kind of like the drug of choice for pain, and especially with patients that have cardiac issues. Typically, they'll use morphine because it can increase oxygenation at a lower dose. At higher doses, then the respiratory depression comes in and it would overwhelm that. So that's generally why morphine is preferred.
Thank you. Okay. So there came a time when you were involved in the investigation of dosing in the nighttime ICU within the hospital. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And did you participate in a HR interview at the hospital?
Yes, I did.
And do you know the date of that?
I'm sorry, I can't recall the date. It had to have been the first couple of weeks of December.
Did you opine at that time about diversion?
Repeat that question.
Did you opine during that HR interview as far as whether or not there could be diversion as part of this scenario, this dosing scenario?
I may have mentioned a little bit of concern, but my concern was not as great as what the dosing was going on.
Okay. Do you at this time believe that there was diversion going on in the nighttime ICU in the fall of 2018?
No.
Okay. You have retired and separated from the hospital at this time, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. What were the proceeding, or how did that proceed as far as a timeline from this HR interview forward?
Well, in January 27th of 2019, I was put on administrative leave. And
Stop right there. Do you know why?
what was told to me,
Objection as to what was told to him.
Sustained.
Did you receive a written document?
No, I was just verbally told I was
Okay.
replaced.
And as a result of being told that, you didn't go to work anymore. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And then how long were you on this administrative leave?
Approximately 6 months.
Okay. And what happened at the end of that 6 months?
On July 11th, I was terminated.
Okay. And how were you terminated?
I got a phone call from my chief operating officer and the director of human resources for Mount Carmel West. They called me and told me.
So you did not receive a formal written termination?
No.
Okay. Do you have a separation agreement?
Yes, I do.
Okay. If you know, how many other people on pharmacy staff were either terminated or not reviewed or let go?
I believe the number was 13.
And as a result of this, did you have to hire counsel? Or did you hire counsel?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you also appear in at the state pharmacy board?
Yes, I did.
And did you give testimony there?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Did you discuss systemic failures at Mount Carmel West at the pharmacy board?
Systemic failure.
Failures in the pharmacy.
Yes.
And what did you tell them about the failures?
Well, they were asking me questions that were relevant to, or at least trying to find out what the failures might be. I personally didn't feel that there were failures in the pharmacy. I thought we had a pretty solid system, and so they just were asking me more about the process of what was going on, and in terms of actual failure. I don't think that we came to a conclusion at the end of that there was any real failure of the pharmacy.
Okay. Was there discussion about the handling of retrospective review?
Yes, there was a discussion about that, and we talked about whether or not pharmacists were responsible for retrospective review on the orders that were pertinent in these cases, which of course was fentanyl, midazolam, which were procured by Pixis override. And so consequently there was a discussion as to did our pharmacists review these orders retrospectively, because when you use override, it's not a prospective review of the order. The pharmacist doesn't get a chance to look at the drug order prior to it being administered. So then in the pharmacist's queue, after the process has already been done, it will show up in the pharmacist's queue later. So the pharmacist will complete the order just to clear it out of his queue, but they never really prospectively reviewed it. And we discussed that at the Board of Pharmacy meeting.
Okay. Had you received any direction from Trinity Health as far as that process?
Yes. When our computer system, our new, at the time, new computer system, which was Cerner, was put into place at Mount Carmel, there was, we began to realize that there was, in the PharmNet part of the computer system that the pharmacists work with, there was a box that appeared that had to be checked in order to clear orders out of the pharmacy queue. And there was a discussion about when the pharmacists checked that, did that mean that they verified the order retrospectively? And there was quite a discussion about that. Our staff pharmacists were concerned about that because they did not want to be held responsible for verifying an order that they never really saw that was already administered. So we talked to Trinity Health. It actually wasn't me, but it was the previous director of pharmacy, and spoke to an officer in Trinity Health about this, and our pharmacists being held responsible for that. And the answer was no, they're not going to be held responsible. And then also, we had a communication with the State Board of Pharmacy. He said pharmacists are not responsible for retrospective verification of orders. So those are the two pieces. So I was able to say to the staff they're not responsible.
Thank you. A moment, Your Honor. Can you tell us when those discussions took place with Trinity? Or with the farm board, too?
The discussions with Trinity occurred before I became director. My guess, it was maybe 2011. I don't have it exact, 2010 or 2011.
Thank you. What about the farm board?
The State Board of Pharmacy, it had to have been, I don't know, maybe 2013, something like that.
This was after you became pharmacy director?
I'm not sure. I can't answer that. Might have been when I first began, but it did occur. I just can't remember. I believe it was maybe 2013 or something like that, 2014.
Okay. And actually, I'm finished with direct.
Ms. Manasci, we're getting close to break. Do you want to go 10 minutes, or we can break and you can just start out fresh?
Fresh, if you don't mind, but
Okay.
Jerry?
Is that okay, guys? You guys use a break?
Sure.
Okay, let's take 15 minutes. Let's actually take like 20 minutes. And 25 too, okay?
All rise.
Remember the admonitions, so we'll see you in 20 minutes.